Welcome, everybody, to the Den of the Dogs podcast. I am your co host, Clarence Wilson. And with me this week is another member of our Believeland Media family, Josh Ungar. Josh, what's shaking, brother?
Not too much. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. Happy to have you on this week. Talk a little bit of Browns and
Yeah.
make sure that you're following Josh on social media. And we're going to give out his handle in a little bit. Also, make sure you're checking out his articles. Josh is writing a lot of stuff on the monsters and professional wrestling. So if you're into that thing, check it out for sure. And even if you're not into it, check it out, yo.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into it. Josh, we had the Browns' second preseason game this week, a 21-20 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of backups in, so it was a little hard to kind of get a gauge on, I guess, players that might stick, players that might not. One of the things I was kind of impressed with was Josh Dobbs. He looked really good out there again against second teamers, but he looked good moving the ball, threw a lot of screens, but did have some downfield passes as well. Uh, Ended up with threw for 14 for 20 for a buck 41, uh, four rushes for 47 yards and a touchdown. Was the team's second leading rusher for the game, so that was nice to see. As well as our guy John Kelly, who I swear every time I see him out there, I think he's a linebacker. It must be his pads or something like that, man. But 14 carries, 14 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Jerome Ford, 9 carries, 31 yards, still displaying the kind of one of the things I talked about last week with his great vision, almost like a Le'Veon Bell, the way that he kind of waits, and hits the hole. Josh, what are your thoughts on the preseason game?
So first of all, I 100% agree on what you were just saying about Jerome Ford. I totally see what you're saying about him being that Le'Veon Bell esque type of running back. We'll get into this a little bit later, but maybe Kareem Hunt does end up getting traded if Jerome Ford impresses the coaching staff enough. Who knows? We'll see. But overall, I didn't love the run defense from the Browns. I get it. Some of those guys might not make the roster, so I'll hold my judgment. But overall, it felt like Boston Scott, the Eagles running back, who I presume is going to make the roster for Philadelphia as their backup running back to Miles Sanders. I felt like he was getting easy holes too often and getting big chunk plays. So the run defense is what really stood out to me in a negative way. I do agree with you. I liked the play of Josh Dobbs as the backup quarterback. Josh Rosen, on the other hand, not so good. And I think saying not so good is being generous.
Yeah, he struggled a lot. 7 for 20 for just 88 yards. Just didn't look comfortable. Didn't look good. He's looking more and more just like the camp arm, who's going to be here for until maybe the end of next week, and then the Browns may move on and just go into the regular season with two quarterbacks. We'll kind of have to see. I agree with you on the run defense, and again, it is second team guys, second and third team guys trying to make the roster. But Togiai was in there for a second, and I know that he's probably going to be in the DT rotation. Uh, we've talked about it several times on this podcast. The defensive tackle, the middle of the line, is something that really scares me at this point. Obviously, we wouldn't see those kind of runs, I don't think, with Clowney and Miles in there. That would definitely help. But the middle of the line is just to me, it's an area of weakness,
I agree.
and I think we got to see it, pretty much straight up and down with the preseason game this week, and the way that Scott just kind of ran all over these guys. Uh, it was a little concerning, but as we said, it's still second and third team guys. So, we'll kind of have to see, I guess, what the Browns finally come up with for next week. Anything outside of things we discussed that you thought were positives?
Positives. Let me look. Let me look at the receiving core. Oh wait, might help if I change to the Brown stats on the ESPN app. I was like, wait, where are the Brown stats? Oh, it's because I was only looking at Eagle stats. My bad. Sorry. Even though David Bell only had 3 receptions for 46 yards, I liked what I saw from him. So that could be he could be a good third option at receiver, something like that. Griffith Stewart, Nakia Griffin Stewart. I liked what I saw out of him. He had 3 receptions for 33 yards. So everybody else basically had 1 reception except for Harley Jr., who had 3 receptions for 30 yards, and Jerome Ford, who had 4 receptions for 26 yards. But everybody else was basically either 1 reception or 2. So I liked that for the most part. It seemed like we were a pretty balanced offense, spreading the ball out everywhere. Didn't seem like Josh Dobbs zeroed in on like, oh, I'm only going to throw it to this one receiver, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. Yeah, he seemed to spread the ball around, keep everybody happy. This receiving core, I will say, what, Bell did look decent in his play. But the receiving core is another aspect of the team that bothers me a little bit. We're going to get into that as we kind of go forward in this particular podcast, because I think that this final preseason game is going to be something that they're going to need to figure out a few things, the Browns, at a few different positions.
Yeah, Jacoby should play in this preseason game. What did you think of their decision to not play him at all in the preseason game on Sunday against Philadelphia? Did you agree with that?
Well, I guess I'm okay with it because although it's not been it hasn't been determined to be 100% from some of the things that I've heard and read, that they're going to use this last preseason game against the Bears as a dress rehearsal. So they're going to give some of the starters a little bit more chance to play. So I'd like to hope that Jacoby gets in there. I think he needs the reps. I think he needs to be on the field with Cooper, and whether it be Chubb and or Hunt, and just kind of get a rapport with the guys, especially with the wide receivers. One of the things that we'll discuss later is who was the number 2 receiver. Will we figure that out? But I think he needs to throw the ball to these guys in a game type situation, so he kind of gets an idea. All right, you know what? If this happens, then you need to go this way. If this happens, you need to go that way. You need to come back to the ball or whatever. Just get a rapport with the receiver. So if he doesn't play this week, I'll be concerned. I will absolutely be concerned. But as of right now, since he didn't play in this game, as I said, I'll decide whether it was a good thing or a bad thing if he doesn't play this upcoming week. Did you want to see Jacoby?
I actually did want to see Jacoby because, you had the suspension come down or get extended to 11 games. So once the 6-game suspension came down, we knew Jacoby was going to be the starter. And then, we're not going to get into the whole Deshaun Watson thing. I'm just bringing that up for the purposes of the discussion overall. But like what you said, there's a big difference between going against guys you're familiar with defensively in practice. Like Jacoby knows, I shouldn't say he knows what Myles Garrett is going to do, but he's familiar with him. Whereas, like, if he had been out there against Philadelphia, he would have seen different defensive schemes. He would have seen, like, if the linebacker is blitzing from the right side, or if the defense decides to do blitz a cornerback, something like that. Different defensive looks that he might not get in practice. So yes,
Absolutely.
I would have liked to have seen him on the field Sunday against Philly.
Yeah, the one thing that Jacoby knows 100% for sure in practice is he's not going to get hit. So
Exactly.
it would be nice to have him come out and play. Since they didn't do it this week, it'd be nice for him to get in a couple series against the Bears and get some live game action, and kind of have that pitter patter and know that you're all right. This is not playtime anymore. This is in practice. I'm not wearing the red jersey that says nobody can touch me. Like, I'm out here now. Now I understand also, the Browns probably don't want to put him in too bad of a situation where he does maybe have an opportunity to get hurt, because right now it's Jacoby Brissett and Josh Dobbs and Rosen. And as we said earlier, Rosen, might be a camp arm, and Dobbs has taken, I think, maybe had 13. I don't know how many NFL actual snaps he's had, but again, playing in the preseason is only going to give you so much. But I get, in a situation like this, Jacoby needs to get some reps in.
100%. And like you said, there's a big difference between wearing the red jersey in practice, where it's like, nope, you can't hit me, and then getting into the real thing and being like, oh, I can get hit. And the other reason I would have liked him to have played on Sunday against Philly is because, like, he would have been playing in the elements. I know, like, later in the game, it ended up not being that bad, but in the beginning, it was raining. It wasn't the best field conditions, wasn't the best conditions overall. I want him to have some experience in that, because what happens if, we're playing the Steelers in week 3 on Thursday Night Football and it's bad weather? Like, is he going to be able to lead us down the field in that 2-minute drive to possibly put us in a position to win that game? Something like that. Or, it's snowing late in the season. That type of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the things that any player needs is reps with the guys they're going to be on the field with in the NFL. I think it's a key thing. As I said before, you build a rapport with guys. You get a sense of where they're going to be at, and you can actually discuss it with them. You can talk about it all day in practice, but once you get out there in live game action and have to make adjustments, I would like to believe that it's better for you to kind of do those things in the preseason and kind of get an idea of what you might do. And then obviously, in game, you can make your adjustments, but having a rapport with the guys and knowing what's going on, to me, is big.
Yeah. It's like, when you're out there in the game, you can learn, like, okay, Amari Cooper likes to do post routes and he doesn't like to do slant routes. Or, okay, David Bell likes to line up in the slot position. Or David Bell is better on the outside. You learn that type of stuff with game reps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as we said, this was a lot of backups played, so you get a little bit out of it. I think we all know now that Josh Dobbs can play against second and third teamers. Hopefully, that we won't ever have to see him on the field this season. But if we do, I feel a little bit better about where we're at with a guy who's got very, very, very little NFL experience.
And what I also like about our quarterback room overall, Deshaun Watson, Jacoby Brissett, Josh Dobbs, sure, they don't all have the same abilities. Like, in many people's eyes, Deshaun Watson's a top 5 quarterback. You can debate that all day and night. We're not going to get into that. But they all have similar skill sets, if you will. Like, they're mobile quarterbacks that can throw on the run, but they also have the ability to escape the pocket and run downfield and gain 5, 6, 7. Maybe they can break off a big play and get, I don't know, 15 yards on a run, something like that.
Yes. It's the mobile quarterback is something I've long wished for in Cleveland, and now we got three of them. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I do agree that having three guys with similar skill sets is going to help that way. Stefanski's going to obviously change the offense depending on who's there, and probably pull out a few plays here, maybe add in a few plays here, but he can kind of keep everything generally the same.
So let me ask you this: do you think that we've seen Buffalo call designed quarterback runs for Josh Allen? We've seen other teams call for designed quarterback runs. Do you think that we'll see that at all this season with Jacoby Brissett, where the play is designed to be a quarterback run?
I think possibly, but I also think that the Browns are in such a delicate position at quarterback that I really believe that a lot of the run plays might come off of maybe inserting Dobbs for a play or two.
Like
not quite Wildcat. Yeah, not quite Wildcat because he can actually throw the ball a little bit, it seems. But yeah, just having him in there for his legs because I know for sure he's faster than Jacoby. So I wouldn't mind seeing them sub him in, kind of similar to how Tennessee did not Tennessee, the Raiders did last year
with Mariota.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think that if Brissett goes down, in these 11 games we're watching this out, then the Browns are in a serious quandary at that moment. There's been talk of Jimmy G, but Jimmy G's coming off injury as well. It just does. It seems like right now the Browns could be either A, waiting for cuts before they add anything to the roster, or B, they're just happy with that quarterback room the way that it is, and they think that they can leg it out for the 11 games before Deshaun returns, and then they've got three healthy quarterbacks in the room.
Right.
So,
yeah, it is a really weird situation that the Browns are in. Then again, this whole situation has been completely unprecedented with, everything with Deshaun and the accusations and the suspension, all this and that. Again, we're not getting into that, but overall, you know what I mean. But getting to your point about who the number 2 receiver is, I don't even know if we know who the number 1 receiver is, to be frank with you. Because, I like Amari Cooper. I think he's a very good route runner. I'm not sure he's a number 1 wide receiver, though. I'm not completely sold on that idea.
I mean, I can see where you're coming from. The guy's Amari is a proven player, but as far as being a true number 1, that's up for debate. I can absolutely see that. But he might not be a number 1 receiver on a bunch of other teams in this league, but in our wide receiver room, he's the number 1 receiver.
Right. You're saying he's kind of been forced into that position.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if there was another receiver out there that was available, I think he would still stay number 1 unless you're going out and making a trade for somebody. If you're looking at the free agency market or anything like that, there's not really a whole lot of there's not anybody out there better than Amari Cooper at this particular moment, and he might be a number 2 on a lot of other teams, but for us, he's definitely our number 1. I just can't see anybody else that's going to kind of take him out. Speaking of Amari Cooper and number 1s and number 2s and things of that nature, the Browns are going into this Chicago Bears game, the final preseason game of the season, and I think there's some positions that could be up for grabs. Stefanski has not come out and said he's going to play any of the starters. And I was doing a little research on the Bears, and their Coach Eberflus, has not said if he's going to play any of the starters. So in this final preseason game 3, there's only 3 now. Um, what are you looking for? What are you looking to see in this final preseason game? Because I know for me, it's who's the number 2 receiver, number 1, number 2. If the starters play, can this defensive line, can they hold up? I imagine we might not see Miles and Clowney, but I'd like to believe that, or maybe see them for a few plays. But I'd like to believe that the starting DTs are going to be in there, and I'd like to see how they're going to play against. Hopefully the Bears play their number 1, so we can kind of get an idea for at least like I said, a few series. But wide receiver number 2, defensive tackle spot as well. And then the third thing I really want to see is who's going to get the kick return game. Who is going to be that person who takes over the kick returns? Like right now, I know that Felton's been doing a lot of getting a lot of the work, but I have questions as to is there somebody else that could step up? So I'd like to see that. What about you? What are you looking for specifically in this game against the Bears, especially if we see the starters on both sides for at least a few series?
Yeah. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, I know the Browns weren't playing their starters in the game against Philly, but the run defense was definitely worrisome for me. So number 1 for me is an improved run defense. Chicago may not have the best running game in the world, but I want to see that you can stop the run game because you're in the AFC North. You're dealing with Najee Harris. You're dealing with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens running game. You're dealing with Joe Mixon, who's I would say a proven running back for Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And you got other teams on the schedule in these first 11 games who have good running backs. Christian McCaffrey week 1 with the Panthers and countless others that are just going to want to run the ball right at you. So I want to see what does the running defense look like. I agree with you about the receiving core overall. I want to see mostly what type of connection do they have with Jacoby Brissett? Because as we've said throughout this podcast, it's very different to play against guys who aren't going to hit you very hard in practice versus getting out there on the field and going against a cornerback from, say, the New England Patriots, whatever. So I want to see how how the connection is between Jacoby Brissett and the receiving core. And the third thing is, can Jerome Ford continue to step up and say to the coaches, hey, I deserve to be on this roster. You can use me as the third back. Or maybe he steps up big time and the coaches say, all right, let's get rid of Kareem Hunt. Let's go into the season with Dearness Johnson, Nick Chubb, and Jerome Ford. So those are my big things.
Yeah, the running back position is kind of crazy because there's a lot of talent in our running back room. There's a lot of talent between Chubb, Hunt, and Dearness. Just those three. Then you throw in Felton, and then you throw in Ford. I think my thoughts kind of, I'm going to wait and see if they, after cuts are made, if they do go after a wide receiver or something like that. But I'm kind of thinking that one of these guys is going to be a heavy pass catcher. That might be Felton, just due to the lack of experience in the wide receiver room. Whether that be Felton or maybe even Ford, or if they use Kareem a lot, maybe coming out of the backfield, or maybe even lining him up in the slot. I think one of the running backs unless the Browns make a move at wideout, is going to have to be a pass catcher for the team especially until Deshaun gets back.
Yeah, I would agree with you. If we are going to do that, my desire would be to have Kareem Hunt kind of play that hybrid role of being more of the pass catching back, if you will, because he brings that physicality to his game. We saw that last year, actually, against Chicago, coincidentally enough. At least I thought that was arguably his best game of the season from my perspective. We can talk about that later if you want, but whatever. But yeah, I'd like to see the Browns utilize the hybrid running back. Maybe you have Chubb and Hunt both line up in the backfield next to Jacoby Brissett, but then you have Kareem Hunt come out of the backfield as a receiver.
Yeah, I feel like the Browns are going to have to do something until they figure out, I guess, who our number 2 and number 3 and 4 wide receivers are. I mean, to me, it's clearly some kind of combination between Bell, DPJ, and Schwartz possibly. Schwartz has had ups and downs at camp. DPJ had a solid season last year, so I kind of feel like he's leading the leading player, I guess, to get that number 2 spot. But then at 3, is it Bell? Is it Schwartz? Is it, Michael Woods, who was injured? Like he's going to be out for a while. Like there's just a whole lot of uncertainty to me at the wideout position after you lose Jacoby. And I've said it before on this podcast, one of my biggest fears is if Jacoby goes down, then we are basically stuck with the same wide receiver core that we had last season and some rookies. Now, I'm banking on DPJ and Schwartz. I'm banking on that they've gotten better in the offseason. So, we won't be dealing with similar things that we dealt with last year with them not being able to get separation. But who knows? They're still young and inexperienced, and then behind them are a bunch of guys that are younger and more inexperienced than them. So, wide receiver is a scary position.
Oh yeah, I would agree. We are closing in on the Zoom closing down on us, so just want to make everyone aware of that. But wide receiving core is very young, inexperienced. We're gonna have to be a run first team. There's no two ways about it, and that's a little scary for me because teams are gonna load the box. I don't want to say play Jacoby Brissett like Baker Mayfield, but I can't really think of another way to put it. Like, because Jacoby Brissett and Baker Mayfield are not the same quarterback. Let's get that straight. But I feel like defenses are going to be like, okay, we know your wide receiving core is not that strong. So you guys are going to run the ball heavily. So we're going to put 9 in the box and say, okay, go beat us, Jacoby Brissett. Go beat us, Amari Cooper. That type of thing.
Yeah, and the Browns seemed to have some struggles doing that last year with while Baker was hurt. The teams are stacking the box, and the Browns. It seemed like they couldn't figure out a way to get things moving. But this is something that we'll be on the lookout for in this final preseason game. Well, I want to thank you, Josh, for coming on with us. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that everybody is following all of our podcasts. We have all of our Guardians podcasts. We have our Guardians podcast, Guardians of the CLE. We have a future Guardians of CLE. We've got, for the Cavs, we've got All Things Cavalier. And our newest venture, Believeland Prep, which is going to be covering a lot of the high school games in the area. So if anybody's interested in checking out the high school games, Make sure you give Believe Land Prep a follow. If you're interested in covering any high school games, make sure you reach out to Believe Land Media LLC. Josh, drop your plugs in, my man.
Yep. So I have my own YouTube channel, Ungar to the Max. I post video collaborations. I do videos from stadiums that I go to. I do a lot of good content. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Twitter at Ungar to the Max. You can also follow me on Instagram at _ the sports room. I need to get back to posting more on that. But yeah, follow me on there.
Perfect. And I also left one out. Get your wrestling fix, the Pile Driver podcast. Dropping bows on them.
Yes.
All right. Well, folks, we've come to the end of another podcast. Next week, we will be back and we will be 1 week closer to some actual real life football. Next week, we'll try and get into the actual matchup against the Carolina Panthers with their brand new minted starter, Baker Mayfield. Name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like it's not a coincidence that Baker Mayfield is starting, but we can get into that, or you can get into that on future episodes. But until next time, we will see you on the next episode of Den of the Dawgs.
Yep. And as always, folks, if you don't wear brown and orange, you don't matter. Peace, everybody.